Thank you guys for coming to our August chapter meeting. One of the things that you see on your screen is a sort of a tribute to Stephanie's final bird banding for her MAPS. This is her third year that she's been doing banding in the MAPS program, and we had the last event this past Saturday. Very hot, but still a really rare opportunity to catch some of these birds, to see her band them, take all that data. And thanks to all the volunteers that have gone out there to help her. And then some of these are the birds that were not as happy to get caught, but happy to get released afterwards. So thank you guys for being here. So what we're going to cover today is some news and information that we'll talk about. We'll cover the volunteer and AT opportunities that we've come across, some membership hours information for us to celebrate on, our recertifications, and then we'll hand it over to Tony, who's our speaker for tonight. Our next meeting will be September 13th, and Las Huellas will be presenting for us. If you guys are not familiar with Las Huellas, I'm not either. But we ran across them in some of their advertising, some of the educational efforts that they do, some of the conservation efforts that they do. And we thought it was a good fit for them to share their mission and the fact that they also need volunteers to help them out as well on their events. I did post this picture. This is Sherry, who ran across a sea turtle coming on shore, so they were able to rescue the eggs and so forth. So she was really excited, so she posted these pictures on our Facebook page. I understand finding these sea turtle eggs is really exciting. I wouldn't know, I never found any. So all I got was carpal tunnel in my hand from the ATV, but congratulations to Sherry and everybody else that has run across a sea turtle. That is a really unique event. I did want to share there's a project that our chapter is doing. We're doing it in collaboration with the South Texas Border chapter. We're trying to collect information on our partners, not only to update our partner list, but if you can imagine being a new member wanting to learn who I can go volunteer with. We kind of don't have anything really good like a dictionary to say, look through these, find a partner that does what you want to do during the times that you can volunteer. And so we have several folks that are working to combine or consolidate our list, make sure it's up to date, and we have some good information for not us that might be looking for a new adventure, or certainly for the new trainees that are coming on board. If you do go to our website, to our members page, there will be a partners link that you can click. You'll see the PDF pop up. My question is, are we missing anybody? Are you volunteering with a group that should be listed? So we're kind of trying to do this, but we're going by the list that we have, and maybe we missed somebody. So if you guys can take a look at that and make sure we have everybody, that'd be great. The Chachalaca is looking for articles. The next due date is August 20th. Again, you got great photos from some experience that you went to. You volunteered at an event that is really unique. This is a time that we can share with everybody. And you earn volunteer time by working on an article. So hopefully it'll be a win-win for everybody. I wanted to share a little bit about an event that was held at Sea Turtle Link in collaboration with IMAS, the museum out in I think it's Edinburgh. One of the things that they're trying to do is figure out what are some of the things that they can do as far as from a fishing perspective to fish smarter, kind of. Let's not put our sea turtles at risk and all the animals that are out there. And so they had this special meeting. We had several people from Texas Master Naturalists attend and participate in the conversation. And some of us walked away with this idea that we as TMN can do a lot more perhaps. We've heard presentations before about the monofilament collection and recycling effort. Sea Grant is doing this, and one of the things that we did is ask, well, one of the discussions at this presentation was, who owns it? Who goes out there to remove that, the filament, report it? So there's some work that needs to be done. And so we're trying to contact Sea Grant to say, well, if we wanted to own these filament recycling spots, how do we do that? Or if there is somebody there, how can we help them do that? And so that is one thing. We're hoping to develop some sort of educational outreach programming, whether it is written, whether it's video, if it's messaging through social media. What can we do to sort of share the message out there? Because the group that we were in, at least on our table, felt there wasn't enough. And especially when we have visitors coming out there, they rent a boat, and they're hightailing it across the bay, do they know what they're doing? And chances are, no, they're not. Hey, they rented a boat and they're going to go out there, and they just don't realize how special, especially the Luna Madre is and what's in there. And again, we thought, well, you know what? Texas Parks and Wildlife has their angler education. They have other things that they have. Could we leverage what they've done to create our own special messaging? Something that we can have out there for the public to use, to look at and use. So hopefully more information will come from this, especially other volunteer opportunities that we might have to spread the word on how to protect our environment. I shared this on Facebook and via email. If you know any educators, they've tied in or they've created curriculum based on the movie. So if you're familiar with Deep in the Heart, sort of exposing people to the environment that they live in. Now they're trying to make sure to bring it into the classroom. And so they've created curriculum to match the movie. And so if you know of anybody in your network of teachers, educators that could use that, I think that'd be great to do. Also wanted to share Spider Mania. This is an event held at Estero every year. It is an opportunity for us, again, to volunteer, to chip in, to help make the event scary but educational for the public that comes to visit. We have had feedback that everybody likes the way Javier dresses up every year. We'll see what he looks like this coming year. So keep that. We'll have more information about how we can help out as the day gets near. I do also want to share there's the migration period is starting to happen. In preparation for that, I wanted to show you this one example. Journey North is asking for volunteers, for citizen scientists to report their hummingbird observations. Other organizations will do that for other birds, for the monarchs and so forth. So now is the time that we kind of get to do some of that. You don't have to leave home. You see them in your backyard, in your feeders. These are the places where you can go out to report that data and record your volunteer time as a citizen scientist. So Journey North, this is their hummingbird project, but they do have the monarch and several other projects that we can volunteer at. So keep an eye out for some of those. But this is their hummingbird project. I've also shared this. The Native Plant Project is coming back from their pandemic hiatus. Their first meeting is going to be September 27th at the Valley Nature Center in Weslaco. That is another AT opportunity for us. So we'll have more information as that date gets near, but they're going to have John Brush doing a presentation on habitat and how it serves our birds and other animals in the Rio Grande Valley. We have an event coming up on August 11th, and this is at La Posada Park. This is where we have that Montezuma cypress stand, still in survival. Bronzeville is trying to preserve that park, preserve those Montezuma cypresses. They're having an event on Thursday at 6:30 to I think 9:30. We will have a table there. If anybody wants to volunteer, just show up. We'll have the material there, and what essentially you're doing is sharing the mission of a Texas Master Naturalist and what we do. And we want to share that with the community. Now, along that, Bronzeville is looking to become designated as a bird city. And so we have folks in our chapter that have become liaisons with the city to say, how can we help? And so we're discovering and learning how to do that. Part of it could be signage at Olivera Park so people understand what's so unique about the parrots that show up there. We've identified a park that we can do sort of what we have at Ramsey in Brownsville. And so we're looking and exploring different opportunities. We have a few people that have already volunteered, but there's going to be need for more volunteers as we sort of figure out how we can do this. Now, some of it may be planting natives, some of it may be saving the natives that are there and getting rid of invasives. The other part can be sharing with the public why these invasives are bad, why do we want to protect this, and so on. So there may be good opportunities for different things that we can do. I did want to share a little bit about the volunteer time. If nobody recognizes Victoria, they're working at the boat ramp with Penny out in Rio Hondo. So far this year, we've counted 9,120 hours, and based on the cost per hour from that we estimate at $23 per hour, we're now at a level of having volunteered over $209,000 worth of volunteer time. And again, I think it's important for us to recognize there is a value for all that we do, for all the blisters that you get, for all the sweat, for all the funny pictures we get to take of you going out there doing that work. It is greatly appreciated. And from Sea Grant, Texas Parks and Wildlife, from our state group, they try to attach a monetary value because that is what people can relate more to. So we've done really well. And you can see how we compare in 2022 to previous years. And I would say 2020 and 2021 are certainly off years for what has happened, but we're getting back. We're definitely getting back to it. Again, we're still attending advanced training. Don't forget the attendance here, listening to our speaker is advanced training for everyone. Please log that time. But definitely everyone in the chapter is logging their time and doing advanced training, and that is greatly appreciated, and we do track that time. With that in mind, to get the recertification every year, we have to commit to and do 40 hours of volunteer time, 8 hours of advanced training. Many folks in our chapter have done that. Over 50 folks have already done that this year, and to me, that's fantastic. That's something that we strive to do. We do have some of the class of 2022 who have reached that recertification, and what that means is that they did their initial 40, their initial 8, just to get their initial certification. So the fact that their name is up there, that means they've already done 160 hours of volunteer work and at least 16 hours of advanced training. So definitely everyone that has already completed their recertification, congratulations. Thank you very much for that time and effort that you've given toward this goal. Recertification is just sort of a recognition that we've done at least the minimum that they ask us to do. And many people go above and beyond that. I did want to point out also another advanced training opportunity that's coming up. August 27th is the next Red Tide training. Contact is at the UT RGV Postal Lab. Training is $15, payable when you show up, but definitely reserve your spot, let them know you're coming. And Shelby, correct me if I'm wrong, if they let you know you can get in without having to pay at the gate, just let them know that you're going to the lab.
Right, yeah, that's mainly for the RSVP to get the names so you don't pay at the gate. And then, yeah, we'll take cash or check at the event.
Now, with that in mind, you may have seen the post that Tony had put out there that he has received the pins. And I think you have one pin that you want to go ahead and present tonight if you want to go ahead and do it now. This Red Right Ranger training is one of the things that will count towards your Texas Coastal Naturalist certification. And we have one person that has achieved that as well. I was waiting for my Red Tide pin, but we actually have to have a Red Tide event and us volunteer at the event for it to count. So some of us have gone through the training and we're not really wanting a Red Tide, but that's what it's going to take for us to get there. So.
And there is a Red Tide in Mexico right now. I just read about it online. My wife found the link to it. So we may end up having one here. We don't know yet. But first of all, it's been 7 months since I could award this to Robin. And this is Robin Gelston's Texas Coastal Naturalist pin. So she took a Red Tide training and several other things. And she also has a certificate. Finally.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Robert mentioned that we have Red Tide pins now, and I don't know how to show it online.
So you can see yourself here in the.
Oh, okay. Can you all see the pin? So that's the pin, and if you're a Red Tide Ranger and you have sampled Red Tide, contact me and we'll award you the pin. Joni, would you come up because you've sampled Red Tide? And she is, Joni Gillis is a Red Tide Ranger, and so she gets her pin.
Thank you.
So congratulations. And there's the cover for it.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay. There's one more training coming up, September 27th. We're going to have what they call a HABscope training. And that is a It uses AI to actually, when you put a drop of water under a microscope and the AI identifies the cells, counts them, sends them off, and we get a report back. It's like high tech. And so we'll train how to do that.
So you don't have to count off?
No, you just put a drop of water on a microscope, zoom in, and that's it. Yeah, it's fairly simple.
And so for anybody that is red type or has gone through the training now, or as of now, still has to go back and learn this new system, right?
Well, if they want to sample red tide with the HAB scope, yes, I suggest they come do that. It's really interesting just to learn how to do it.
Okay.
Even if you don't want to sample red tide, come on in and learn how to do it, because it is, we only have room for 28 people in there doing the training. So sign up quickly.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our speaker for tonight. So Tony gets to go sit down and then walk right back up again.
Okay, I just threw this one in here because this is what our chapter logo, that's what was used to make our chapter logo. And the artist, he sent me a copy of what they were, what he had done. And so if you look at our logo, that's where it came from. Tony Bennett was the one that gave us the logo, or created it for us. And it's a chachalaca in front of a leaf. Does anybody know what leaf that is? Saywall palm, right. Pete got it. So when Barbara called me and asked me if I wanted to talk about shrimping, I said yes. And so she said, let's make it a little more exciting. And we decided to do it on sharks, or shrimp, sharks, and turtle, and sea turtle, something like that. Oh my. And so I figured I'd start out with sharks, because we do have a lot of sharks off of here. And these are some of the more common ones that we find off of South Padre Island, Boca Chica, and out in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And I'll start with the top left one. That's the most common shark that we find on the snapper banks, the Atlantic sharpnose. And it's usually feeding in deeper water. If you're fishing for snapper, many people will catch those. And it usually gets up, I mean, a big one would be around 3 feet long. The next one to the right is called a bonnet head. And it is a member of the hammerhead family, but it has more of the shape of a bonnet in its head. And it's not just carnivorous. It eats seagrasses. And that's one of the only sharks that is not carnivorous. I would like to test the mercury in that. Sharks are known for high mercury because they accumulate mercury from other animals that eat it. But if a shark eats seagrass, it may not be as high as in mercury, and you can probably consume it. You're going to see a lot of dead fish in this because I work in fisheries, and we catch fish to study them, and I like to eat them. Seafood's good for you to eat. You should eat it at least twice a week. Oops, I went. The black-tip shark is probably the most common species that we have around here. We had tift just this last weekend, and one angler brought one in and won the tournament with the black-tip. They get up to about 6 feet long, and they're pretty much in the Laguna Madre and near shore. They're called a coastal shark. A cousin of it is the spinner shark. It's in the same family, or same genus, Carcharinus. And the spinner, we also had a spinner shark brought in, but we couldn't certify it. But we did get to look at it. The only difference between the spinner and the blacktip, when you look at them, is the anal fin on the spinner shark is black. If you look at that last fin before the tail underneath, see how it's black? And it's not black on a blacktip. And that's how you can distinguish between those two species, because they're very, very similar looking. Scalloped hammerhead is probably the most common hammerhead species that we have with the longer head on it. And it I've seen them, I guess, up to around 8 feet long. And most of these sharks just eat fish. I don't think any of them are real man-eaters until we get to the bull shark, which is next. And I did bring a bull shark jaw that I worked on, and I don't know if it I think everybody can see that. The light's not real good on it, though. You can see it good? Okay, well, I'm going to turn it upside down. And can y'all see the inside? How many teeth are on the inside that are ready to come up?
Yes, watch your fingers.
Yeah, well, this has bit me several times since I cleaned it. It gets back at me. One of the ways we identify sharks is by their teeth. And their teeth are made out of the same thing that their skin is, or the scales on their skin, dentin. So they're really tough, they're hard, and the shape is I guess tells you what species it is on most sharks. They're very different. I did bring one other tooth, if I can find it. I've got it in a piece of plastic. And, oh, I'm going the wrong place. There we go. That is a tiger shark tooth. It's very distinct shape. And this tiger shark was probably about 10 feet long. And notice there's serrations in it. And so different sharks have different feeding methods. The bull shark and the tiger shark tend to saw their prey, and some other sharks just grasp them. And I do have a jaw to a spinner shark that I talked about earlier. And can you see how those teeth are made for grasping rather than sawing? So they catch their fish that they're going to eat and then just pull it in and use for grasping. And the spinner was about 6 feet long. While I'm showing stuff, I do have a dorsal fin to a shark. And can anybody name think of the name of what shark this may be? I'm going to hold it up so the audience can see it. Can anyone think of the name by looking at it? That's it. Robin got it. It's an oceanic white-tip. And this shark is famous for eating people. When the Indianapolis, a ship during World War II, sunk in the Pacific, this is the shark that attacked, like, I think 900 sailors or more. I don't know how many it was, but it was a lot. And I have a good friend that caught one of these and hung it up on a pole, and he was just walking around the deck, and it swung over and bit him, and he's got a huge scar on his leg. They're really nasty sharks. And we do have them offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm going down to the bottom left, the tiger shark. That's another tough one. I don't really like them that much either. I go out on shrimp boats and do a lot of research. And I've seen tigers come in and look at bait, and they'll swim around, and then they'll just go for it. One of my biggest worries is when I'm offshore is falling off of a shrimp boat. We just lost a guy out of the port of Brownsville, and they never found him. And probably, I don't know, you can imagine what his fate was. The next shark is a lemon shark, and that's an easy one to identify because it has two dorsal fins that are about the same size. And none of the other sharks that I know of in the Gulf look like that. There was one caught just north of the causeway several years ago, and it made the state record. I think it's been beat since then, but they get up to around 10 feet long. And they like to feed at night. So if you swim at night, beware. And then I mentioned the oceanic white tip, the last one on the list. I showed you the fin to it. And they've got very long pectoral fins. Oceanic white tips do not come into the bay that I know of. Trying to click it. Am I doing something wrong to?
Galveston and your one of the beach, people find shark's teeth along the edge of the surf. Never found them down on the island. But you say there are sharks here, why did you not find shark's teeth down here, but you get up to Galveston?
So Tammy asked the question, how come they find shark's teeth on the Galveston beach and not on the South Padre Island beach? Probably because the Galveston seawall was constructed out of dredge material, and dredge material has a lot of shark's teeth in it. And so it's probably washing down that. That's my theory. And here on South Padre, they have sand that's been dredged, and it's dredged from the ship channel, and I guess maybe this wasn't as oceanic as the Galveston area that they dredged from. It's just a good guess. My favorite shark is the whale shark, and if you got, I subscribe to National Geographic. I love reading it. And we just had a report offshore of a whale shark, and I was interviewed, and they wanted to know about the habits of these because not much is really known about them. I know that they swim off of here. They swim by South Padre Island, pretty much going toward the Mississippi River, and they hang out off the mouth of the Mississippi River. They almost circumnavigate the Gulf of Mexico. And they swim very slowly. They're filter feeders. They don't have giant teeth. But they have a really unusual way of feeding. They hang vertically in the water. And usually little fish that are swimming around in the ocean are attracted to things that are floating in the water. And so all these little fish will start swimming around the head of the shark when it's near the surface. And the shark will drop down a few feet and open its mouth at the same time and create a whirlpool into its mouth. And guess what goes in there also? All the little fish. And I knew some researchers that actually saw one drop down, and there were blackfin tuna jumping, and one jumped into its mouth. And so they didn't say what happened after that, but that seems like a rather big fish for a whale shark to handle because they're filter feeders and they eat small fish, and that's pretty much it. But interesting story because even reading this incident that they were talking about these whale sharks feeding, they didn't mention that feeding habit of just suspending themselves and then dropping down and creating a whirlpool into their mouth. They said that 2 sharks were working that bait pod. So really interesting that not much is known. Fishermen know a lot more than the scientists. And that's something I've learned throughout my lifetime. Fishermen tell me a lot of things that we haven't learned. And so listen to the fishermen, they know. Pete, you're a fisherman. This shark is a long fin mako shark, and now you can't catch them because it's one of our offshore pelagics, and the Japanese started longlining the Gulf of Mexico with 90-mile long lines back in the 1960s, I think, right around 60s and 70s, until we established the 200-mile limit to get other countries to keep them from fishing our waters. We do still longline, and because of the extensive longline that's gone on in the Gulf of Mexico, the longfin mako and shortfin mako are not allowed to be taken now. So if you do catch one, you have to cut it off and let it swim away. The shortfin mako, and I don't know if I have a picture of one too. No, I don't have it there, but these are 2 other sharks. I'll get to the shortfin mako in a minute. But we have a 6-gill shark. It's very primitive because most sharks have 5 gills, but the 6-gill has has 6 gills, and it's deep water. And this was taken on by one of our longliners out of the port of Brownsville in deep water off of the mouth of the Mississippi River. The bull shark, I mentioned that earlier. I chased one with my surfboard. I was stupid when I was young, trying to hit it, because you can tell a bull shark very easily because they have a rounded snout. It's not real pointed. It looks a little pointed there, but no, it's really rounded if you look at it from underneath. And if I can go back, you can see, well, they didn't show it on the bull shark there, that it has a rounded snout. I have a key up here that you can look at the roundness of the snout. So there's a short fin mako shark, and that shark is known for its aerobatics when you catch it. We were longlining for swordfish off of Florida, and we had 2 miles away from it, I saw the biggest splash I have ever seen in my life. And a mako shark had been working our catches that we had. Our swordfish, they were apple coring them. There would be a head and a tail and a spine.
If you would not talk, please make plans to call your parents or arrange for a ride to pick you up before 7:45 p.m. Thank you.
That was an announcement for the library. They're going to be closing in 55 minutes. I think I need to talk faster. A stingray is a member of the shark family, and they're very interrelated, as you can see from this stingray in the picture. What do you think happened to that stingray? Shark attack. And I did bring a spine to a stingray to show everyone. I don't know, there we go. Can everyone online see it? And it's serrated. It's serrated and very solid. The stingray has a muscular tail, and it'll have 1, 2, sometimes 3 of these sticking out of it. And I'll pass it around so y'all can look at it. It has a toxin on it, and also bacteria. And so if you ever get stuck with it, you shouldn't get stuck. You should always do what they call the stingray shuffle, where you walk along walk in the water and don't lift your feet up. That way you'll tickle the stingray and it'll swim away. If you step on it, its tail will stick up and it can go into your leg. I've been hit by one, and it's extremely painful. The toxin is protein-based in them, so if you ever get hit, and it's not too bad, you don't have to go to the hospital, you can get rid of the pain by denaturing the toxin, sticking your foot or your leg in hot water, because protein gets denatured in hot water. Remember that, because it happened to me, and a guy named Don Hockaday, who used to be at the Coastal Studies Lab, pulled out a big 5-gallon bucket of water, and I stuck my foot in there, and the pain went away very quickly. It was excruciating pain at first, though. So I mentioned the pelagic sharks that are currently of concern, and we've got quite a list of of sharks that you cannot catch anymore, that if you do, you have to release them. And you can look up the federal regulations for those online under highly migratory species if you want to look for it. So now we're going to move out of the sharks and talk about shrimp, one of my favorite things to eat. They're nutritious too. And Robert mentioned that he wanted to know about turtle excluder devices, and I don't know how we're going to demonstrate this, but Robert, can you come up here? And we probably need somebody else. Barbara, you want to? Maybe we should get up on the stage. So this is a shrimp trawl. Fall over. Can everybody see that online? These are the doors, and they spread the net. Can you show them? This is the bridle that goes to the boat. And so the net drops down to the bottom, and the doors hydrodynamically spread it open. And the bottom line, which is the lead line they call it, drags along the bottom, and then there's a float line that stays up a little higher. When you're fishing for a certain species, for brown shrimp, they stick close to the bottom. You don't have to have flotation on it. But if you hit a turtle, if you encounter a turtle, say my pocket knife is a sea turtle, maybe it'll work. Well, I think it's going to drown. Ah, there it is. You see what happened? It went through what we call a turtle excluder device, and I'll come closer and show it to everybody. Can you see it? You can see it? Okay, so it has parallel bars that the turtle hits and then goes out through a flap on the bottom. And that way, turtles don't drown. Okay, Robin's got a mouse. Oh, I broke the mouse. But it went through very easily. And since we started using turtle excluder devices in the late 1980s, we saved thousands upon thousands of sea turtles. And one of my jobs is to make sure these devices are working right. They have to be at a 55-degree angle when they're hanging up on the shrimp boat. When we look at it, we measure that. And then there's all these flap measurements and other measurements that we have to check because this is required by the Endangered Species Act.
So who invented that?
I know the guy that invented it. His name was Sinky Boone. He's passed away now. I knew him. He's from Darien. He was from Darien, Georgia. And he used to exclude jellyfish, big jellyfish called cannonballs. And they used a device similar to that. So he decided, hey, I can get rid of the sea turtles too.
Cool.
And it's evolved a little bit since then. The real one is about 32 inches wide and maybe 50 inches in length of the oval. And they work. It depends on how many nets you're fishing. See that? There's up on the screen, we used to fish 2 nets, but we've gone to 4 nets because we actually pull less netting through the water when we're pulling 4 nets. And so we have 4 turtle excluder devices. And they cost around $300 or more a piece to have or to make. So you got to be careful not to lose your gear. Well, the nets probably cost 10 grand maybe on each side. These are the 3 commercial species of shrimp that we have in the Gulf of Mexico. You can't really tell much by their color, but sometimes they do show it. The pink shrimp is easy to identify because it has a spot on its side. And the fishermen of Hispanic descent call them pintos. What's a pinto? What? A spot. Yeah, a spotted horse is a pinto too, right? With a big spot on it. Brown shrimp is the most common species that our fishermen catch here, and they catch between 50 to $72 million worth of shrimp annually. This year, it's probably not going to be that good because we have very low production and other problems too that I'll get to in a little bit. White shrimp is an inshore species, and Robert was asking about some turtle excluder devices that shoot the turtle out the top of the net. And fishermen that fish for white shrimp use a device that faces the opposite direction, but still lets the turtle out. Only it comes out the top. The one you saw comes out the bottom of the net. Because white shrimp are inshore, very shallow water, and you don't want to shoot the turtle down into the mud. And it's so much easier, I guess, when you're in shallow water to let or when you're catching white shrimp, to let the turtles out the top. How you can tell the difference in the 2 species real quick. On the right-hand side, brown shrimp and pink shrimp have 3 ridges on the, and how do you use the pointer on this? Which one's the pointer? Ah, there it is. Okay, you see these 3 ridges here on that last segment? White shrimp usually have one segment or one ridge, and that's how you can tell the difference. And to differentiate between a brown shrimp and a pink shrimp, you can fit your thumbnail in between two of those on a brown shrimp, but you can't on a pink shrimp. So that's how you can tell. And if you ever eat shrimp in the shell that have been cooked, you can tell people what species they are. To tell the difference between a male and a female, right here, this is a female. This is the first set of swimming legs. These are the walking legs up here. And the first set of swimming legs on the female doesn't really have a large appendage, but I don't know if you can see very well, but there's a large appendage between the two swimming legs right here. And that is called a plasma on the male. And what that does, it transfers a spermatophore to the female. And I'll show you where the spermatophore attaches. This is during the breeding season, and this is where the spermatophore attaches, and the female can fertilize the eggs when she wants to, when she's ready to lay the egg. She can carry that for some time. I don't know how long. But that's how the shrimp are. The eggs are deposited near that by the tail of the shrimp, and she pushes on the spermatophore and releases the sperm out too. And that's how baby shrimp are made. And one other thing is shrimp have a courting like dance when they're courting, when they're mate, before they're going to mate, or before the male's going to transfer the spermatophore to the female. The male will swim underneath her and bump her, and sometimes they'll wrap around her, and there's usually nice music, and just kidding. But it's interesting. They have a courting dance. And that's one of my shrimp prints that I did, and just to show people how that happens. So, how many babies does a shrimp have? Does anybody know? Or can anybody tell me? Eileen? A lot. That's right. Between 1/2 to 1 million eggs she lays. But guess how many survive to just keep the population going? 2. You got it. You've heard me before. She knows. So 2 shrimp will survive and keep the population going. Shrimp go through metamorphosis. Whoops, I'm going to go back. There we go. Go through metamorphosis into what they call anoplei, and they go through several other stages until they reach the post-larval stage. And they usually lay the eggs, or they do lay the eggs, offshore, like off of South Padre Island. And they depend on the wind and currents to take into primary. Anybody know what our primary bay is? It's got a very nice name that's appropriate. The what? No, Laguna Madre, the mother lagoon. It's very appropriate because the little shrimp grow up inside the mother lagoon, and then about 4 to 6 months later, they move offshore and start growing even more. And they usually move out to deeper water as they grow and feed on different things. Finally, they start feeding on polychaetes offshore. And our brown shrimp have a very distinct flavor from eating these polychaetes. And the brown shrimp, are like other shrimp, don't really eat those. So the brown shrimp, that taste is due to them eating worms, which is really interesting, I thought. So I mentioned the shrimp trawl, and this is just a schematic of how 4 nets are pulled. And then over on the upper right, we have a bait trawler. They only pull 1 net, but they have to pull a turtle excluder device too. And I mentioned that you can't really tell by the color of the shrimp what species there are. Does anybody want to guess what these are? What species? Brown and white. They're 2 brown shrimp. Depends on how they're, I guess, what they're doing, whether they're swimming, whether they're just laying around. They bury up in the substrate at different times. The white shrimp comes out of the substrate during the daytime, swims around and feeds, and then buries up. And then at night, the brown shrimp and the pink shrimp will come out of the substrate, swim around and feed, and then bury up. So we have diurnal and nocturnal species. And then on a shrimp boat, we can spend 30 to 50 days out there, the longest 60 days sometimes. And the longest, I guess that's the longest trip. And the nets are usually pulled for several hours. And at nighttime, because our port of Brownsville and Port Isabel ports, they produce primarily brown shrimp. So they fish at night and they anchor up during the day. Any of y'all that have fished offshore probably see shrimp boats anchored during the daytime because the crew is sleeping, and then at night they wake up and they'll drop their nets in the water and drag for a while. And this is one of the toughest things to do. It's the equivalent of stoop agriculture, bending over, trying to head all the shrimp. That's what these crews do. And it's really tough on your hands and on your back. In fact, my back is permanently bent in one spot because I spent so much time on deck doing this. We have an invasive shrimp species that's come into the Gulf of Mexico since I think the 1990s. Some escaped from some shrimp farms in the Caribbean and also I think South Carolina, and they're called Asian tiger prawns or black tigers. And we thought that they might be a real problem, but we still only catch them occasionally offshore. And if you save enough of them and if you split them open, put cream cheese, jalapeno, and wrap them in bacon, they're the best shrimp you've ever eaten. You can't keep them alive. It's against the law if you catch one. You have to kill them and eat them. And we did have a bait shrimper catch two small ones. Those were like 7.5 and 8 inches, juveniles, in the Brownsville Ship Channel a couple of years ago. See what the adult looks like compared to those two? That's an adult female. And the two smaller ones, one's a male and one's a female. But they're out there and they're reproducing, but they just can't keep up with our other shrimp. So when we're catching something besides what we're fishing for, we call that bycatch. And sea turtles were our first bycatch issue that the shrimp fishery dealt with. And one of my jobs as a young marine biologist was to go pick up dead sea turtles on the beaches of Georgia. And they would have like 700 to 900 of them wash up dead during a shrimp season. It was awful. And so Sinky Boone out of Darien, Georgia, developed the turtle excluder device, and that has dropped. I haven't seen a dead sea turtle on the beach due to drowning. I've picked them up during freezes, but never drowning. But they do wash up occasionally. We just can't figure out what got them. These are the 3 species of sea turtles that we encounter in the Gulf of Mexico that usually end up going through our turtle excluder devices. And the first person to bring attention to it in Texas was Isla Loescher. And we met with her in the early 1980s, and that's Margie Tower Smith from WBP Shrimp in Port Isabel. Both of them have passed away by now, but she was instrumental in making people aware of the problem of sea turtle mortalities through shrimp trawling. And because of that, the National Academy of Science did a study on sea turtle mortality and found out that taking of the eggs and shrimp trawling were major contributors to the population decline of sea turtles. These are what the turtle excluder devices look like on shrimp trawls. We've got some larger ones now because they want to accommodate leatherbacks now, and so they have to be a little bit larger. Leatherbacks get huge. And one of the other bycatch issues we had to deal with was small red snapper, young of the year red snapper. You can see those are shrimp in that picture, along a shrimp and I think a herring and maybe a small flatfish, not the flounder that we eat, and a crab. But you can see how small those snapper were. And so we had to develop devices to exclude them. We call those bycatch reduction devices, or birds. And one that you see up there in the upper right is a fisheye, and that's usually placed behind the turtle excluder device. And you can see how the turtle excluder device works in this schematic. And we also call them TEDs. The reason people harvested sea turtle eggs was for food, and it was thought to be an aphrodisiac. There used to be mule trains between Rancho Nuevo and Mexico City. The mules were loaded with sea turtle eggs, and they were flown across the Atlantic Ocean to different places, like Saudi Arabia. They believed that they were aphrodisiacs. I've tried them. I don't think so. They taste really fishy too. I grew up in an era when they used to eat sea turtles. My parents used to eat green sea turtles. We lived in Key West, Florida. And my mother used to make angel food cakes out of the egg whites from sea turtles. And we'd have to tie them down to the table or they'd float off, believe me. They were that light. Not really. So that was one of the reasons. People like to eat them, and for different reasons too. So I guess sea turtles, many of our master naturalists, probably many of you out there and many of you listening, have worked with Sea Turtle Inc. and other groups to watch for the sea turtles. It's nesting season right now. And Barbara, did you tell me? Someone told me how many sea turtles who was it that mentioned that? Robin. How many sea turtles have laid this year on South Padre? So she said 99 nests, over 9,000 eggs, and they released 6,000 hatchlings this year, just with Sea Turtle Inc. and the people that. So kudos to all of you that work with bringing back the sea turtles. This is what the Kemp's Ridley population looked like in the early 1980s. And then people were made aware of it, and they stopped most of the harvesting of sea turtle eggs in the Rancho Nuevo area, where most of the Kemp's Ridleys come ashore to lay their eggs. They also come up here. And I've got even more data on it from what happened between the 1960s and 2015. You can see it dropped tremendously. I think this was the annual nest that we had. And then the most recent information that I got was from 2017. And you can see in 2010, what do you think happened in 2010? Anybody have any idea? See the decrease? The oil spill. Who said oil spill? It was the oil spill that we had in the Gulf of Mexico. That's what they attribute it to. Longline fishing also affects sea turtles, loggerheads, and other sea turtles like different species of sea turtles will take a long line, not just swordfish or sharks. And these are some of the swordfish that we'd capture. And I'm not going to show you pictures. I've got some pictures of dead sea turtles with long line, what they call gangins hanging out of their mouth. It's awful pictures. You can just imagine what it is. We had I think 40 of them one year wash up on the Boca Chica area because of long lining off of Mexico and gill netting. Speaking of sharks, one shark I didn't mention, though, the swordfish that we would catch in the Gulf of Mexico had these little ice cream scoops looking wounds on them, and they found out they were done by cookie cutter sharks, a small shark about 18 inches long that bioluminesces and attracts the swordfish to them. Then The cookie cutter makes a mad dash in, takes a bite, flicks its tail, and takes a scoop out. And you can see scars. Those are scars. Those scars let biologists, or they help biologists find out whether the population of swordfish off of New England mixed with the population in the Gulf of Mexico. And they found out there was little intermixing because of the scars on the swordfish. Off of New England, maybe once in a while they would find a scar. But in the Gulf of Mexico, they'd find a lot of scars and a lot of wounds. We found a whale once on Washington Shore on South Padre Island that had 500 cookie cutter bites on it. Yellowfin tuna is one of the other species that they would take long lining besides the occasional sea turtle. And this is what sushi grade #1 yellowfin looks like. Nice red cherry and fat. It's very springy. The tuna? Yes. Yes, they fish specifically for those. And longline caught tuna if they bring them in fast, they're really good, high quality fish. And then they do catch an occasional bluefin. You have to have a permit now. This one weighed 700 pounds. Look what the price brought at in 2019 at the Tsukiji market or in Tokyo. $5,065 a pound. We're having an announcement now. And so we have orcas in the Gulf of Mexico too. If you ever seen the whaling wall, that was done because there was a group of orcas spotted in 1987 that were off of South Padre Island. And they call it the Padre Pod. And an artist named Weiland painted them on the convention center. Since then, a guy on an oil rig reported 200 killer whales in the Gulf of Mexico. I didn't think they were that. I didn't even think they were there when I first got here in the early 1980s, but they're out there. Plastics. That's one of the issues that we're facing now. I didn't think that plastics presented a big problem other than they're ugly, they create trash. But now they found that heavy metals may be attracted to those plastic particles, and when we consume them, we may get more heavy metals, bacteria, and things like that. I've learned a lot just recently about plastic. It's one of the biggest problems in the oceans today. And gill nets contribute to plastics in the ocean. And that's another way that they catch fish out of Baghdad Beach, south of here in Mexico. These are some of the gill net boats that fish, and they drop their lines to the bottom. They also catch sea turtles, and they drown in these nets. And this is a picture. We were on Boca Chica fishing, I think last year, and we saw some Mexican gill netters come in and work the beach right off the U.S. You can't, it's very hard to distinguish because the mouth of the river is starting to swing more towards the U.S. And they'll come right off our beach there at Boca Chica. Richard Moore told me about this, Pete. This one washed up on Boca Chica. It had several green sea turtles that had drowned in this gill net, along with a few sharks too. So those are some of the problems that we face because of the illegal fishing of the Mexicans in U.S. waters now. U.S. ports cannot take Mexican vessels in to do anything, to fuel, to get worked on, because of the problems that we have on the border. The ponga boats, or launches they call them, come across in gill net, and the U.S., they can arrest these fishermen, and they take them, they seize their boat motor, destroy it, and the fishermen go back and get another boat and motor because the cartels are supplying them. There's some kind of connection with smuggling too, so that's how they think. But there's some fishermen out of Mexico that have 20-something violations, and they just take them back. They get another boat and motor, and So this is one of the reasons that the U.S. has restricted Mexican vessels, fishing vessels in U.S. ports. And just to mention, somebody mentioned Bahia Grande. It's now open, about 200 feet wide. We've got water going into it. And this is what it looked like before and then after the Brownsville Ship Channel was built. To give you an idea how many wetlands we lost with the Brownsville Ship Channel. But we gained a lot of commerce too. My son did that for Dr. Benavides many years ago. And finally, rip currents. If you ever go swimming, know how to get out of one. Don't try to fight it. Swim sideways. And usually we have a current going to the north here off of South Padre Island. So swim north, because if you fight, you might be fighting two currents if you try to go in, say, to the right, which would be south off of South Padre Island. So you'd want to go to the left. And I think that may be it. Yep. Any questions? Yes. Eileen asked if the shrimp spermatophore is in a sac, and she squeezes it and the sperm comes out. And you can catch them occasionally with spermatophores attached during certain times, during their spawning season. Any questions from anyone online? Well, thank you. Okay. Thank you.